dread to think what they would happen. The results would be for the global economy would be absolutely catastrophic. And there's no easy solution here. But if there's any path to a diplomatic solution, we should really take that seriously.
Well, I think a recession is inevitable at some point. As to whether there is a recession in the near term.
Money is a database for resource allocation, but there's no resources to allocate except yourself. So money is useless.
Elon Musk challenges the conventional understanding of the economy, emphasizing that it's not just about money, but a complex system.
So what is an economy? People get confused. Sometimes they think an economy is money. Money is a database for exchange of goods and services, and for time shifting the exchange of goods and services. Money is a database. Money doesn't have power in and of itself.
Money's utility becomes questionable in certain conditions as Elon Musk delves into the intricacies of its relevance.
Financially, it was a very tough situation because Twitter in a normal year would do probably $4.5 billion in revenue, $4.5 billion in cost. So they'd probably lose a little bit of money because that's why I call it a really expensive nonprofit, because Twitter is, over its lifetime, I believe, negative on profitability. Like, it's lost more money than it's made.
Expressing concerns, Musk critiques the decision-making of the Federal Reserve, raising alarm about potential consequences.
Freedom of speech is pretty expensive.
Yeah.
It really is. Cost billions of dollars. It's currently costing freedom of speech is currently costing about $2 billion a year. So this is a lot.
Just on Twitter.
And lost revenue, it's right now, roughly $2 billion a year.
Elon Musk forewarns that a recession is not just a possibility, but, in his view, more likely than not, signaling the beginning of a collapse.
Like, you can run the thought experiment of you're trapped on a remote island, shipwrecked on an island, and you've got $1 trillion in a Swiss bank account. It's worthless. You'd rather have a can of soup. So, all the Bitcoin in the world, and you're still going to starve.
Critiquing the Federal Reserve's sluggish decision-making, Musk points out the detrimental effects of latency in economic policy.
In rough terms, we're doing about negative $3 billion a year in cash flow, and possibly trending to do worse than that, possibly 4 or 5. It's hard to tell where the bottom was. And $1 billion in the bank, so roughly 4 months to live.
Musk paints a picture of money's futility when resources are scarce, emphasizing the need for a more nuanced approach to economic systems.
People often will think of money as having power in and of itself. It does not. Money is information, and it does not have power in and of itself. Applying the physics tools of thinking about things in the limit is helpful.
The collapse is imminent, according to Musk, who highlights the prolonged confirmation time for transactions, a sign of systemic issues.
It's simply, you can think of raising the Fed rate as somewhat of a brake pedal on the economy. Frankly, it makes a lot of things more expensive. Certainly things that are bought with credit, but then it has downstream effects on even things that aren't bought with credit. So, if the car payment or your home mortgage payment is absorbing more of your monthly budget, then you have less money to buy other things. So actually, it affects everything, even those things that aren't bought on credit. So, and my concern with the way the Federal Reserve is making decisions is that they're just operating with too much latency. Basically, the data is somewhat stale. So the Federal Reserve was slow to raise interest rates. And now I think they're going to be slow to lower them. That appears to be the case.
Acknowledging the absence of easy solutions, Musk urges a diplomatic approach to navigate the complexities of the impending collapse.
The actual economy is goods and services. So then, what limits the output of goods and services? That limiter is labor. Even capital is distilled labor. So the limiting factor for the economy is labor. And so if you address the limiting factor for the economy, then it's not clear that an economy in the traditional sense has any meaning anymore, because you have no constraint on goods and services. The only things that will be missing are things that have artificial scarcity. So that where we decide to make it scarce, like a particular piece of art or a particular home in this exact location or something like that, but there will be no shortage of goods and services.
Musk underscores the necessity of a system that provides a meaningful exchange ratio between goods and services for economic stability.
I think that is more likely than not. It certainly isn't. It's not a certainty, but it appears more likely than not. What do you think?
Comparing the current economic situation to 2008, Musk paints a grim picture, suggesting that the state of affairs is worse than the last major financial crisis.
An issue that's coming to a head with Taiwan, and it's unclear when exactly push will come to shove, but it seems that there's a good chance push will come to shove. It's trending in that direction. I dread to think what they would happen. The results would be for the global economy would be absolutely catastrophic. But China has been very clear about its goals, One China, and including Taiwan as part of China. So one does not need to read between the lines. One can simply read the lines. They're very clear. And they're not getting. We're basically adjust pricing to match demand. We obviously did a big price drop in Q1, but now January is usually a terrible time for car buying. So there's seasonality to car purchases. With January is often the worst month. So we did a big price drop, and then recently we did a price increase. So as I mentioned to the audience, the reality is that all car companies make significant adjustments to price, because you've got the MSRP number, and then if demand is high, dealers will charge some premium over MSRP. If demand is lower, they will have manufacturer incentives. So you can actually see a very big difference over the course of, say, 6 months between the peak to trough of all cars. It's just that Tesla is so immediate and obvious and transparent. It's not a question of MSRP and then markups or discounts.
Well, I think you have to say, what are the existential threats that humanity faces? We spent a lot of time talking about the birth rate thing. That might be the biggest single threat to the future of human civilization. Then there's, artificial intelligence gone wrong is a big concern. I think religious extremism is a concern. If you are stranded on a tropical island and you have $1 trillion, it's useless because there's no resource allocation. If you're stranded on a desert island with no food, all the Bitcoin in the world will not stop you from starving.
Yeah.
So, just think of money as a database for resource allocation across time and space, and then what system in what form should that database or data system, what would be most effective? Now, there is a fundamental issue with, say, Bitcoin in its current form, in that the transaction volume is very limited, and the latency, the latency for a properly confirmed transaction is too long, much longer than you'd like. So it's actually not great from a transaction volume standpoint or a latency standpoint. So it is perhaps useful as to solve an aspect of the money database problem, which is this sort of store of wealth or an accounting of relative obligations, I suppose.
China does so much of the world's heavy lifting on manufacturing, especially if the manufacturing is, simply hard work and say not particularly glamorous. China just does an immense amount of hard work that most people have no idea how much hard work they do. So being cut off from Taiwan is much less of a concern than being cut off from China. Now, China would reciprocally suffer, of course, because I would say that the economies of China and Taiwan they're like conjoined twins with the Western economy, with the rest of the world. So China and the rest of the world being conjoined twins from an economic standpoint will mean that the separation is going to be dire indeed. Okay. That happens. I hope it does not happen.
Well, I have to say, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about cryptocurrency, hardly any at all. I have thought for a long time about money and the nature of money. What is money? Yeah. And it's really a database for resource allocation is the way to think about money, in my view. So now, fiat currency is actually fine as a database for resource allocation if you have a predictable money supply and it doesn't get inflated or deflated too much.
If it's rules-based.
If it's rules-based and provided government does not too much abuse their privilege to create more money. Some amount of abuse is almost guaranteed to happen, but if it can go too far. The temptation over the ages to debase money I think it goes back to probably the ancient Sumerians. But at the point at which money was invented in any form, including in gold, there was unavoidable temptation to debase the money supply. So when you think of any given money system, again, I sort of apply information theory to a money problem. Just think of it like it's an information system. You want to minimize noise, minimize latency, minimize packet loss, and so inflation would be adding noise to the system. If the transaction rate, if what it takes to conclude a transaction is a long time, that adds latency to the system. Fraud is kind of like packet loss. So I guess I kind of think of money like I think of information moving on a network. Bandwidth, latency, jitter, which is the variance in latency, packet loss, those fundamental elements.
And you need to have something that allows for the to have efficient value ratios between products and services. So you got this massive number of products and services, and you can't just barter. It's just like that would be extremely unwieldy. So you need something that gives you a ratio of exchange between goods and services, and then something that allows you to shift obligations across time, like debt and equity, shift obligations across time. Then what does the best job of that? Part of the reason why I think there's some merit to Dogecoin, even though it was obviously created as a joke, is that it actually does have a much higher transaction volume capability than Bitcoin, and the costs of doing a transaction, the Dogecoin fee is very low. Like right now, if you want to do a Bitcoin transaction, the price of doing that transaction is very high. So you could not use it effectively for most things. And nor could it even scale to a high volume. And when Bitcoin was started, I guess around 2008 or something like that, the internet connections were much worse than they are today, like order of magnitude. They're way worse, in 2008. So like having a small block size or whatever is, and a long synchronization time made sense in 2008. But to 2021 or fast forward 10 years, it's like comically low.
Well, I actually think that anyone that has a company that's providing goods and services is doing great. I mean, it's not that everyone should tackle so-called great challenges. I would recommend that they don't actually, because the probability of failure is very high. I mean, just try to be useful is my advice. It's very difficult to be useful. Say like total area under the curve of how useful have you been to other people that cumulatively. It's very hard to make that a big number. So I should really just try to be useful and make great products and services that people want and make their lives better. That's it. And as far as encouraging entrepreneurs to start companies, my advice would be that if you need encouragement to start a company, don't do it.
Right. Yep.
Because
Yeah.
you'll probably, the probability of failure is very high. So you really should not, if you need encouragement, don't do it.